Okay. I'm just going to make sure, that I can hear myself recording on there. So yeah, these are being recorded on a Google Hangout. And like we've said before, you can do a Hangout on air, which then connects to your YouTube channel. So with your Google account, with your Google Plus account, you actually have access to Google Hangouts and your own personal YouTube channel. So we have been recording all of these. They are all on our YouTube channel. And remember, that link was originally on that very first email that Gordon sent out with all of these sessions. So those are all there if you want to. Yes, have a seat, yeah. And then the computer. Yeah, we're doing forms today. So when you're logged into your Google account, and then we want to go to Google Drive. So remember, there's a variety of ways you can get there. Probably the easiest one is when you first log in, if you happen to go to your mail or your calendar first. These 9 squares up here at the top will always give you the options that you can go back and forth between any of the apps. So it's Drive that we want to start in today. So last week we talked about specifically Google Drive kind of in general, and then docs and sheets and slides. We now are having a whole session just on forms. There are a lot of benefits that you can do with forms. And I'm going to try to talk about it from both the instructor's viewpoint and how you might use it in the departments that you're in if you're not teaching. So what I wanted to start with first, though, is if any of you have been using Google Forms. And no? Yes. You've been using them? What have you been using them for?
A group that I volunteer with, I organize the hotel bookings. I send out the forms for what they need for
okay.
rooms and how to use it at work.
Okay. So I'm just going to go back. Hi, Elizabeth.
Hi.
I'm just going to mute your microphone, okay?
Okay.
There we go. There we go. Okay. So yeah, so you're using it to collect data from people, for hotel rooms and things that they need to, the information, right? Good. So yeah, that's the form. The best use of a form is collecting kind of a one-way set of data. So you're asking questions, they give you the answers, and you're just collecting that information from either your students or from people in your department, people you're surveying. There really isn't. Forms aren't meant to be kind of a two-way conversation tool. It's not like they can come in later unless you take another step and share the spreadsheet or share the results with them. You have to actually do that, share who you want to see the results. Really, it's a way of you asking people. They can do it anonymously or they can put their name to it. You ask them some questions, they give you the data back. And then it puts it in a spreadsheet, and then you do whatever you need to do with it. So really, it's a survey tool is kind of the simplest use of what a form can do. All right, so to create a form, so you have to go into Google Drive, and you would go to your Create button over here on the left-hand side. And this is where you would also go to create your documents or your presentations, your spreadsheet. We're going to go to Form. Oh, because you've updated to the new Drive. Because we talked about that last week? Yes. So if you have updated to the new Drive, back here in your settings, you will see you can experience the new Drive. You can update if you want to. There's a few minor things they're just trying out. It's kind of in beta right now. You can still go back. I'm in the old version, kind of like the old one a little bit more. I'm just used to it. I know where things are. If you want to update, you can. It's entirely up to you. If you don't like it, you can go back. If you do experience the new Drive, instead of create, it says new. So, but it's the same function. You'll go back, yes. So if you want to go back, I think if you're in the new Drive and then you don't like it, this will then say leave the new Drive and it puts it back. So if you want to try it, go back and forth and see. Eventually it may become that we have to go into the new, but it's just giving us the option right now. Yes?
Username and password for this?
It should be the same as what you need to just get on your computer in your office. No, not the adultscollege.ca. It's just G Fournier, just to get onto the computer. Yeah. All right, so to create, we pick form, and then this is the default that always comes up. So you're given an untitled form, and it defaults with one multiple choice question to start off with. So just like we've been talking about in all of these, if you're doing a doc or a spreadsheet, a form, whatever, the first thing to do to get into a good habit of is change the name of it right away. So you can either do that here, or you can actually change the name of the file right up here at the top. It's probably best just to start from the file itself. So we'll call this test form. And you'll see when I change the name of the form up here at the top, it also changed it here as the title of the form as well. Then there's a variety of settings that you can do. You can decide how much information you want to collect from your users right off the top. So up here, there's these form settings. So it defaults and asks you to require Olds College login to view this form. So if you want just Olds College people, either students or staff, to be able to complete this form, if you want to keep it private within our domain, then you would check this. If you think there's going to be anybody who is not going to use an Olds College account, if this is being sent out to public, or perhaps students who aren't logging in with their Olds College email, they're using a personal or a private email, then you might want to uncheck that. It's going to say, are you sure this is going to be accessible outside of Olds College? Are you okay with this? Then you would say yes. If you did select this, require Olds College login to view this form, you can then go one step further and ask them to, it will automatically collect their names. So if you're collecting student information, you might want to keep track of who's, especially if you're asking questions, if you're using this as a participation thing in class, you might want to have automatically that who's filled out what. If you want it to be a completely anonymous survey, then you would uncheck those. So then you wouldn't collect. So you could make it that Olds College students or staff have to log in, but then it doesn't automatically collect. So there's lots of different levels you can build in to how you want the students or your staff or whoever to be completing this. If you only want them to fill it out once, they only get one option to do this, you can check only allow one person response per person. But the only thing with this is it tracks it by their Google account. It doesn't track it by their IP address on their computer. So if somebody didn't have a Google account, then technically they could get in and do this multiple times. If they do have a Google account, and especially an Olds College account, they would only be able to complete it once if you checked. That's right. Yes, so if they don't have a Google account, they could then come in and fill this out multiple times. Yeah, so it only restricts, if you look at that little question mark and hover over it, it says respondents must have a Google account for that function to work. And then now if you wanted to shuffle your questions around, you could do that too. So perhaps if it was almost like a quiz, and we'll talk about later, you can build quizzes in with your Google Forms if you want to. You might want to have the different questions show up in a different order if you didn't want people to be cheating off of each other, if perhaps they're all using this at the same time in a computer lab. So you can do that as well. So that's kind of the initial settings of your form. You can decide to what level you want to do that with. You can then also decide how you want your form to look in general. So up here, so we're in edit questions right now, there's this change theme. So if you click on that, it then allows you over here on the side, there's a whole bunch of different choices, a bunch of different pictures. So maybe there's one you like. Oh, this one looks kind of nice. Yep, come on in. No, that's all right, come on in. So now I can pick kind of if I like this picture, if it kind of goes with the questions that I'm asking. Maybe I'm asking some question. What's this one? Oh, maybe that's a good one to have, or it's a farming one. It's fall. That kind of fits around here, so maybe I want to use that one. But maybe I don't like the style of the font. I don't like the color. I want it to be a little bit different. So I can then get in and customize, and I can then decide if I want to change the header image, if I want to change the font of my title, if I want to change the font of my description, the question, the text, all of those. So as you get in and build your questions, if you're realizing, I don't really like that font, I like it for the title, but I don't like it for the questions, then you can get into this, you just click on Change Theme, and then it allows you to change, if you want different fonts, different colors, different sizes, you can do all that there. Okay, so that's the theme of it. And I think there's just a pretty general one as well if you just want the basic. But if you want it to kind of go with the kinds of questions you're asking, you can play around with that and add some detail to your form.
So how did you get that far on the slide? Yeah,
It was, I went to, let me go back. It was customized underneath. Oh, let me go back. So once I picked it, I clicked on customize underneath. So I went to change theme up here at the top, and then it opened up all these themes over here on the side. And then once I picked it, then underneath it there should be a customize with a little pencil beside it. Then clicking on that opens up all the different options. So yeah, there's lots of fun ones there that you can do. Okay, so that's how you can make just the general look of how this, and that has actually come quite a ways. You used to be able to just pick your theme, but you couldn't change like the font size and the colors and the text and all that. It was kind of all stuck. Now you can start with a theme and then you can make it specific to what you want. All right, so once you kind of have an, and you can do this at any time. Like, don't feel like you have to do your theme and then do your questions. You can do all your questions first and then go and do your theme after. It's entirely up to you which order you want to do this in. You can go back and forth. The buttons are up here at the top. So you can do edit questions, go back and change the theme, go back and change your questions. You can just go back and forth. Okay, so you'll see though when I go back to edit the questions, I lose I don't see what my theme is anymore, because now I'm just working on what the questions are. Then when I go in to view the form, then I will see all of my questions and my theme at the same time. But let's just stay with editing questions now, and then we'll have a look at all of this together. Yep. Yep. Yes. This one up here, so the question was, I'm just repeating it so the people on the Hangout can hear it too, is just editing, renaming it. It should be the same. This is actually the name of the file up here at the top. So when you go back into your drive and you see the list of all of your files, this is what you would see. This is what your participants who are filling out the form, this is what they see at the top of the form. So when I created it up here, it defaulted to this. But let's see if I add some extra text. It doesn't reflect, yeah, all changes are saved. So changing it here doesn't change it up there. So if you wanted to give it a slightly different title for your own filing systems versus what the participants would see, you can do that, yeah. Okay, then to add your questions, you just scroll down a little bit and we see, so the default is it gives you a multiple choice question to start off with. So the question title is what you would actually ask. You might say, what is the weather like today? And then the question type is just like you decide then what kind of question you want to ask your participants. So the default is a multiple choice. Multiple choice only gives you the option to pick one thing. If you decide to use checkboxes, then the participants could choose multiple items. So they might pick 2 or 3 things out of a list. Choose from a list just allows them to pick one thing. Text, paragraph text, is they can actually then just type in an answer. There's nothing that they have to pick from. A scale would be like from a 1 to 5. They could rank like one thing. You could say, what's the weather like today? 1 is terrible, 5 is awesome. A grid is, you can then, and I'll show you an example of this, but it would be ranking multiple things. So you would have the list of all the things you would want to rank, and then 1 through 5 across the top. So if you had, I'll show you an example here in a minute. And then if you wanted people to be able to enter in a date or enter in a time, it just allows them to pick it right off of a calendar or just enter in the time, perhaps that something happened. They could fill that in. All right, so I'm actually going to leave this one. I've created one that I want to finish working on. Okay, so this is one that I've already created. I've already started. It was a rubric. I wanted to try and play around with this a little bit. So if you are using this in a class, you could use this as a rubric. So I've created 3 separate questions. So I have one here first that was a student name. This is a text question. So I can see that from, there's a bar there that they would type their answer in. This is a grid question. So I've created items that I would be marking it on, and then I have how I would mark it, 1 through 5 across the top. And then I have a paragraph text question here. So paragraph text just gives them more places where they can write their answer in. So I'm going to add one. So then as you just keep adding your questions, there's just this add item down here at the bottom. So I'm going to go into multiple choice. The question I'm going to ask is, who did you work with on this project? So this is maybe something I would give out to students, asking them to mark maybe how did they feel they did on an assignment, put your name in, mark how you did yourself, put some comments in, and then I want them to also then add, who did you work with on this project? So they really can only pick one other student. There wasn't multiple options in this case. Then I'm just going to show you a little trick you can do. If you have a list, so I created a class list of student names. Say maybe I have this already in an existing spreadsheet, maybe I have a list of items that I want to ask some people in. So what if I just take this and copy and paste this? I take my list, I just put some names in, and as long as each one is on its own separate line, if I go back to here and I go to option 1 and I paste them in, it automatically recognizes that each one goes on a separate line. So I didn't have to go copy Jim, paste it in, copy Bob, paste it in, Sue, and so on. As long as you have them all on separate lines or all in separate cells of the spreadsheet, copy and paste, just paste it in the first option block and it automatically fills them all in. So it's a little bit quicker and easier way, especially if you already have an existing spreadsheet with items of questions that you would want to ask. It's just a much easier way to do it. So then I could keep adding questions if I want to. There usually are some advanced settings for some of these options. So if you were curious just to see, like in this case, it would be shuffle the option order. If I was doing the checkboxes where I can ask them to pick more than one thing, I can limit it and say pick, well here I'll show you an example. When I do one. So I'm going to do another one. Let's say I pick checkboxes. Now when I go into the advanced settings, I can now say, turn this on, I can say select exactly 2 things. So then it makes them that they have to pick 2 out of a list of 5. So you can kind of decide how much, if there's any extra settings that you want to put in a question, you can do that usually in that advanced settings. You can make a question a required question, so if they have to fill it out. In this case, and then let's say if I just backtrack a little bit, I don't need this question, I made a mistake, I'm done with it. If I don't need it, up here in the top with the questions that I'm working on, there's always these 3 options. I'm currently editing it. If I wanted to duplicate it, if I wanted to ask a very similar question and just change a few little things, I could duplicate it and then just edit it. Or if I don't need it, I made a mistake, or I don't need this question, I can just delete it. So up here at the top, maybe I want to make the student name a required question. They have to put in, maybe I want to make all of these required questions. To be able to go back in and edit this again, I just click on the little pencil, it opens up that I can do some editing, and I can click on make this a required question and hit done. So then when it becomes a required question, you'll see a little asterisk beside the text. Now, as I hover over these, you probably notice I see these arrows, the 4 pointed. That means I can move these. If I decide I don't like the order that they're in, maybe I want to put this comment block. If I just click and hold, I can then pick it up and move it, and then I drop it to where I want it. So you can change the order around if you decide later that you thought, that question I should have up at the beginning. I can click and move it around. So we're starting to see a lot of instructors using this in their class, especially if students have, maybe they've had a reading to do the night before. The instructor will create a form with 3 questions about the reading, saying, what was the most interesting, or it might be just general things like what was the most interesting thing you learned, what is something you want to talk about. They make it completely anonymous. Then it gives the students the chance to participate without, if they're worried about putting up their hand or they don't want to talk, then all they do is say type in their answers, then the instructor can pull up the resulting spreadsheet, and then they can, but then others are also using it as a participation thing and actually then tying in and using they automatically collect the respondents' Olds College usernames, then that would show up in the spreadsheet, and then they can use it as a marking tool. Then they probably wouldn't then show that spreadsheet in class. So you can probably start to see some different things. I had one instructor call me today, and he said we need to poll the students to find out, they want to vote and see who are the 3 students that are going to represent the students on the industry advisory committee that's coming up. So we went through and just made a quick Google form. He made it check boxes so that they can pick the top 3 students that they wanted to vote for. It was going to go in a spreadsheet, and he'd have his results of who they voted for. So we're starting to see lots of different ways that this can be used. If you have any industry people that you want to do quick surveys, you could do this, people within your departments. Really, it's just that one-way tool of you're asking them questions, they respond back with their answers. Okay, so any questions on the types of questions that you can put in here? So yeah, so this is just like, that was text. This is paragraph text. It just makes basically a bigger space where they can write their answers. This was the grid. This was multiple choice. So then when you're done the quiz and you're ready to send this out, down at the bottom, the confirmation page is what they will see after they submit their form. So right now the default is your response has been recorded. You might want to add a little bit to that, and you might want to say, thanks for your time. This data will be used for whatever. So you can give some details, especially if it was going out for industry, if it was a kind of a completely anonymous survey where you're just asking them for that information, kind of to give some feedback on why you're using it. You can do that if you want to. And then if you're okay with them doing this again, you could give them the link to go back and do it again. You might want to uncheck that if you really want them to do it once. If you want them to see the results, in this case it just shows a summary, and I'll show that once we go into the form and to the results, but you can have them get a link where it'll just show it basically graphed the data. It doesn't show any usernames, it doesn't show who put what answers in, but at least they can kind of get an idea of where their information fit in with everybody else's. And then they can go back and edit responses after submitting. If you want them to, you can do that. So it's up to you. You can have them all unchecked. You don't need to have any, or you can have them all checked. It's entirely up to you. So I would then recommend that before you actually send this out, that you view it to make sure that it looks like the way that you want it to look. Because like I said before, and as you probably noticed, you can't see any of your themes right now. It's all hidden. When I go to change theme, it doesn't really show me anything. Like, it just shows me the picture here on the side. But if I click on View Live Form, then it shows me what it's actually going to look like when I send it out. So you may want to do this on multiple devices. You might want to try it on your phones, on iPads, on a computer, just to see what it looks like, make sure the formatting is the way that you wanted it to, that there isn't any surprises. Perhaps if you're doing anything with a grid, that it looks like the way you wanted it to. So there you can definitely see the difference. Just a text box versus a paragraph text does give quite a bit more space. There I can see the multiple choice. Everything is good. So it's the way that I wanted it to look, so I know that's okay. So then I can just go back. I think actually it opens it as a new tab. So I can edit it from here, or I should just be able to go back to the tab that was open before. All right, and then one more thing you have to do before you send out the form is it's also a good idea to just double check and make sure the spreadsheet has been created and you know where it's going to be. So up here in this response tab, if you click on that, you'll see that there are some options that it gives you. So accepting responses means this form is turned on. It's accepting. If you click on that, it will then say this form has been turned off. So then you can decide when you want to make this available. So perhaps if you're linking to it within an email or perhaps in your Moodle course, you might not want to make it available until it's a certain period of time. You can create it, but you can basically turn it off so nobody can access it. Or if the time has expired, you don't want to collect any more answers, you might want to turn it off that way. So under responses, now I check that again, click on it again, now it opens it up. Summary of responses will show me a summary of, and I'm actually going to send this to you and we're going to fill it out so then you can see what responses look like when they come back. View responses. Now I want to, sorry, I'm just going to, this was a form I already had existing and the spreadsheet was already existing. I just want to start right from scratch on one of these just to make sure we all see the same thing. So in the responses, okay, it's the same. So if you just click on choose response destination, it's then going to give you the option of where you want that spreadsheet to be created. You can have a brand new one, a new spreadsheet, and it will title it the same as your form name with responses in brackets behind it. But if you already had a spreadsheet of data, perhaps of all the people you're sending it to, and you had multiple tabs across the bottom of maybe some financial data and some other things that you've been collecting, and you wanted to have another tab that was the results of this form, you could then do it as another sheet in an existing spreadsheet. So if you decide to choose that, then it's going to ask you which spreadsheet do you want to put that in. So it would just put it as another tab along the bottom of an existing one. So if you were doing this in a class, perhaps you might want to have one big spreadsheet, one file, but then have multiple tabs for different days, different projects, different you're doing in your class. It just would maybe make your files a little bit easier to organize. It's up to you. Or you could have completely separate spreadsheets for every single time you do a form, and then just put them all in a folder. So either way, there's really isn't, I guess, one benefit of one over the other. It's entirely up to you of how you like to organize your files in your spreadsheets. All right. So I'm just going to go back to the one I already have existing. You can then decide, perhaps you have some questions that you want to fill in ahead of time for your students. So maybe that you don't want them to put something in incorrectly, or you have some background information of a question you just want to make sure everybody fills in the same way. You can do a pre-filled form. So if you choose that, it takes your form, it then just says answer any questions you want to pre-fill. So maybe you want the same comments to show up in everybody's form. Or if there's a question, it's really if you just wanted everyone to be filled out the exact same way, you would fill in whatever question that is, and then you would hit submit, and it gives you the URL that you would use for that form. So I don't think there would be a lot of use of that, but you do have that option. And then you can clear out all the responses if you want to, and basically start it out fresh. Okay, so I know I have my spreadsheet for this one, and I'm ready to send this out. So then what I'm going to do then is up here, when it's all ready, I want people to start filling this out, I'm going to click on send form. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. So you can either take this link, if you click on it, it automatically highlights it. You can Control-C to copy it. You can then paste it into an email. You can paste it into your Moodle course, however you want to share it with your students. If you wanted to send it to people in Google+, if you maybe had a Facebook group or you had a Twitter account that you wanted the people in whoever are following you to fill out the form, you could do it that way. You can, and then like what I did was I shortened the URL. They've actually built this in now. If I go in and click on short URL, it's shortening, it's thinking, it gives me this option. So it's goo.gl/form/5qdjp, and it's still pretty long. To me, that isn't very short compared to even like that is a little bit shorter. So to get an even shorter URL, what I would suggest doing, and especially if it's in this kind of situation where I'm not emailing it to you ahead of time, because I don't even know who's going to come, really. It's been different people every day, so we don't know, like I don't know who to email it to ahead of time. You didn't sign up for this session. It's just whoever comes. So what we've done is just done it this way, wrote it on the board. Or if you have students in class that you want to do it really quick, you don't want them to have to log into Moodle, click on the link, have it open up. If you just want them to take out their phones, quickly search for a quick link, what you might want to do then instead is copy this whole thing. So I would Control-C. Then I would open up a new tab, and then I would just search for something, like I would just search for a URL shortener, and you're going to find a whole bunch of them. There's websites that will take your long URLs and shorten them up. You can do this with anything. It doesn't have to be just forms. You can. So I've always used the Google ones just because it's Google Workshops. I've kind of stuck with Google. But if you wanted to try Bitly, if you want to try this tiny URL, Owly, they all do the same thing. I'll just pick Google. And then all I do is put my big long one in there, click shorten the URL, and now this is the option I get. So it's just goo.gl/tj0ldy, which is a little bit longer than forms / that big long one. So, and I think there's even a few I've seen that even get it. Like Google still puts the Google in front and then the code. I think Bitly and Tiny sometimes even get rid of that and just have a short combination of letters and numbers. So. I think forever. Yeah. Yeah, so I don't know if eventually you're going to run out of all these different possible combinations of letters and numbers, and because they just, and because here, and then if we do it with Google, I like this in that it will show how many times people have accessed my shortened URL. So you get some analytics behind it with Google. I'm assuming maybe Bitly and Tiny and all those other ones do it too, but I've noticed it with Google that they do have that. All right, so then I can send out, if I go back here, so I can take my shortened URL, I can take my long URL, or if I know specific people that I want to fill out this form and I know their emails and I have them in my contact list, I can just type in their names. So if I start typing in, maybe I want to send it to Amanda, maybe I want to send it to Stacy. These names are going to they're going to come up, even especially because they're in our Olds College domain. The directory is there. But if I also have a contact list that I've built in my, like a group within my contact list, it will also recognize that. So I've created this ETC group. Because I'm all logged in with the same account, even though I did it in my mail, as soon as I type in a group name in Forms, it knows that name. It recognizes it from my contact list because it's all the same account. So if I pick this one, it has 5 contacts. It then automatically filled it in. It was Amanda and Bev and George and Gordon and Stacy were the 5 people in that list. So yeah, if you've created those groups in your contacts, you can use them in your forms as well. So there's lots of different ways you can send this out. If you do decide to send a form via email, I would recommend uncheck that include the form in email. What it does is right within the email itself, it has the form and it does have the buttons like the radio buttons and it does have the blocks they can type in, but we're finding sometimes the results don't come in very well. If you uncheck this, include the form in email, all they will see is you've been sent a link to a form, click on this link to complete the form. Then it takes them right out of their mail and just to a web page that's just the form. It's not embedded inside of their email, where I think it's prone to be a little bit glitchy that way. So get it out of their email, do it completely as a separate link. And then if you want to get a copy so that you can see what it looked like in the end, you can decide to click on that too. Okay, so what I would like us to do is, if you could open a new tab across the top of your browser, and if you could go to my shortened URL and try out that form that I made. So it is, that is a 0, that is not an O. So it is goo.gl/t, j, 0, uppercase L, uppercase D, lowercase y. So if you wouldn't mind, just put in some, you can even just type gibberish in the boxes, that's fine. I just want to show you then what happens when, if you were to do a form, how does this look then when you get the results from your students or your participants. So just like in Drive, everything is, it's all like live. I can see as soon as I go into the form myself, I haven't even gone into my spreadsheet yet, I can see responses, there's 4 of them. So it's automatically updating as you guys click submit. So up across the top, oh, now there's 5, excellent. So now there's 2 different ways I can do this. Oh, 6. Good to see. Thank you. I appreciate that you filled this out for me. So there are now 2 different ways I can do this. I can either view the responses, which is the spreadsheet itself. And then now you can see there's your names. You guys filled in your rubric. Excellent. There is some comments you made. Who did you pick? Now, because I had it tracked, if I go back to the form, I made it so that it automatically collected your usernames. Automatically, they're there. So you didn't even know I was doing that. So you may want to, if you're doing this with students, you may want to let them know that I am collecting this data. I'm not going to put it up on the board. I'm not going to do anything with it. It will be private. You might want to let them know if you are keeping track of who's who. Or you can say this will be completely anonymous. Then I'm going to put this, and then all you can do is just put the spreadsheet up on the board. You could then have your students, you could then show all the different results, and then you could talk about it. It could be a good discussion starter in your class if you see multiple things, especially with students that might not feel comfortable sharing their points of view in class. Typing it up here and not having any name attached to it allows them to say what they want to say without actually having to stand up in front of everybody. So there's some options there. So that's the spreadsheet. That is the, so in responses, that was the view responses. If I go to summary of responses, it shows me it in graph form. So if it's just text, it just shows me the lines of all the text. But then it will start to actually plot this out in a graph. And I think when it's like pick one of, let me just see this one. Yes. So when like the rubric one, it obviously shows it in a bar graph. Because it was multiple choice here, you could only pick one option, then it puts it in a nice little pie graph. So this is the, if you decided in your rubric to allow people down here at the bottom to publish and show a public link to form results, they would see this. They would just see the summary of it. There's no, the names aren't attached to it. Only because I asked you to type in your name up at the top. If you hadn't typed that in, like that, you could have made up anything, really. There's nowhere is it tracking your actual Olds College username in just the summary of it. And then it gives you a little bit down here. It'll show you the days that people filled this in. So all of my results came today, obviously. So if you did it over a period of time, you could see which days are more popular for people to fill in the results. Are they doing it right away as soon as you send it? Are they taking a couple days before they finally get to it? You can get a little bit of statistics on it that way. Okay. Now in the form itself, and you're probably going to start to recognize, and I can how I can jump back and forth between all my tabs is, close that one. Form, the icon is always the green box with the white lines and the little dots beside it. The resulting spreadsheet has that grid inside. So I want to go back there. Now, if you, say, had sent out this form and you wanted people to fill it out over a period of time, but you wanted to know every day if someone has gone in and filled it out, inside of the spreadsheet itself, if you go into Tools, then go to Notification Rules, you can then let it, then you can say in there how often you want to be notified, if you want to be notified at all. So especially if it's like when we do the feedback forms, I have this set up so that I am then notified when we get feedback about these sessions that we're doing. So I kind of like it. It's a good reminder so that I know then when people have gone in and filled it out that I should go and check and read what people have put in. So you don't have to do this if you don't think you ever would need it, but it is kind of nice to know, especially if it is over a period of time, when something new has been put in, you would get the notification. And then you can decide if it's when, like if you want it right away, or if it's just at the end of the day, you kind of get a one email saying it has been updated at some point in the day. Yes, so Tools and then Notification Rules. But you have to go into the spreadsheet. It's kind of weird because it's not in the form. Like it's not in here. you had to go into the resulting spreadsheet and then tools and then notification rules. So it's, I don't think it's in the most user-friendly place, but it is, you just have to kind of go looking for it. It is there. So I think that covers most of it that I wanted to go over with you in this. If you ever decided that you wanted to use this more as a quiz, that you actually wanted students to do questions and then have it tally up all of their answers and give them which ones are right and which ones are wrong and create a score, there is a thing you can do, and it's you go into these get add-ons, and this is something that I can help you with. I'm not going to talk about it anymore today other than to show you this. It's this one called Flubaroo. And so at Flubaroo, it says helps you quickly grade and analyze online assignments and assessments. So once you've done the form, once you have the spreadsheet of the results, so you've created multiple choice questions, you can then go in and put in an answer key. You would have to do the form yourself so that you would put in all the right answers. And then from there, using this Flubaroo add-on, it would then compare your results with everybody else's and give them a score. But if you're already doing it in Moodle, if you're doing your gradebook in Moodle, you might as well just do the quizzes all there. So, but there is that option if you are if you're not really using Moodle very much and you wanted to do some quizzes and have them marked, you could use that. So contact me or any of us in ETC if you want some help with that extra step, but it would be, you go into the add-ons, and if it's not near the top, you can then just search for it, and it's Flubaroo is the one that you'd be looking for. So with the themes, it is pretty easy now that you can change all the pictures, you can change the fonts and the style and all of that. But if you were looking for, like, oh, this form should already exist. Someone maybe has already done this form somewhere. Is it already out there? If you go into File, so you have to start a form first. So I guess if I go right back to Create a Form, and then I go into File, and I go to New, there are from templates. So if I choose that, and you can do this with anything. You can do it with docs, with spreadsheets, with presentations, with forms. So then it opens up this template gallery. There aren't any in our Olds College domain yet, but if you go to the public templates, and then you might need to, once you pick public, you might have to go back and tell it you're looking for forms. But you might find a lot more options of like some different color combinations, some different ways that the spreadsheet or the form looks, maybe some questions that someone has already asked, and then you could basically take a copy of it and then just edit it. So it's a good place to go and look, especially if you think, okay, I can't be the first person to ever create this form. There must be one already out there. So I think you can do some searching. You don't just have to scroll. You can look up here at the top. So maybe if you're looking for one for course evaluation, see if we can find something. There, monthly course evaluation. If I want to use this one, I click it, and basically it just makes a copy of it. So people have uploaded their templates into this template gallery, which will then be able, you can then use it. So you might find some of them are in the old version of Google Forms, but you should still be able to use them. It just, some of the functions might not work quite the same way. Like this, obviously, the themes are a little bit different. My options at the beginning, it just looks a little different, but if I like these questions, I might as well I can still use it. So it's a place to go if you don't want to create the whole thing right from scratch. Look in the templates and see if you can find something. And yeah, and use this for like docs, sheets, presentations. They all will have templates in that gallery. All right. So that's pretty much the majority of forms. Does anybody have any questions?
Once you send the forms out, you want to double check who you sent it to. It's showing up as a, if we take this and then put that URL, we might send it through MailChimp.
Right.
Right? And then we have the record there, but if we're not doing it with that,
Mm-hmm.
we're going to send it, just send it out directly through here.
Right.
So it's in two fields.
Yes.
And then is it showing our sent email, or?
That's a good question. Let me just try it. So Sarai, I'm going to send you this form directly.
Oh, I just checked one of that, yeah, it looks like
It does show up in your sent. Okay, well that's good to know then. So yeah, if you are doing it, so then now let me go back to my mail. I go to my sent mail. I don't see it in there that I sent that to you. Those are emails, not dated today. So I'm not sure if you're not really sending it right out of your email. Might have to look into that a little bit more, how to track who you've sent the form out to. That's a good question. I'll look into that and see if we can, because I think if you do the send form and you just copy the link and share the link, then unless you've tracked at the top using the usernames of who's actually filled this out, but sending it through email, I'm not sure if you can track later who that group was that you actually sent it to. If you, so sending the form is people that can fill it out. If you have others that you would like to work on the questions and be able to see, those are what this Add Collaborators is. So that would be other maybe people working on a project or in your department, other instructors, that they can then see all the results and they can edit the questions as well. And just one more thing about editing the questions. If you do decide in here, so I want this one up here instead, and then I have people fill out the form again, it is not going to change the order in my spreadsheet. So the spreadsheet order kind of gets locked in that when you first initially make the spreadsheet. If you then later go in and change the order, or if you put questions in and then put them somewhere in the middle, it's just going to put them at the end. It will just add them to, if I put a new question in, no matter where I drop it, anywhere inside of here in the order of my questions in my spreadsheet, it's only going to go in as K. Okay, so that's just one thing to keep in mind, is that if you do want the spreadsheet to match exactly, you created your form, made the spreadsheet, and then went back and edited the form. If you don't like the way the spreadsheet is, you want it to match exactly, you might need to delete that spreadsheet completely and make a new one. So, but if you've collected student data, you wouldn't probably want to delete it. But if you haven't collected anything yet, that would be the way to reset it to make it match exactly.
Is that just as a regular Google?
Yes.
So once you've got your
Yes.
data, you can move it around.
Exactly, yes. So yeah, this is just a regular spreadsheet, and you can then sort your columns. You can ask it to sort alphabetically. You could copy and paste columns, move around yourself. Yeah. Yes, that's the nice thing about it, putting it as a spreadsheet at the end, is that then you can do all sorts of analysis with it. And yes, yeah, it's just a regular spreadsheet from this point on. Okay, so thank you for coming today, and hopefully you've picked up a few more tips and tricks about forms, and maybe you'll see some different ways. And yeah, there's so many different ways you can use them, but really it's that one-way flow of information that you're asking people to answer your questions, and then from there you can take the data and use it for whatever you need. Okay, so this session will be posted on our YouTube channel if you do want to go back, if there was something that we talked about today that you want a refresher on. And then again, don't be scared. You can Google all of this. Like if you have any questions like, how do I change the theme? How do I add a question? Just Google the question and you'll get lots of help sites on how to build Google Forms. Lots of YouTube videos. They're all out there.